Hey guys, how you doing?
What's going on, CLG? Welcome back.
Yo, how's it going?
Doing pretty well, guys. Doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing fire, man. I just ate some tacos for dinner. They're delicious.
Let's go.
Hell, hell yeah, it's a meal of a king.
I know you're into those nuggets, though.
I'm more of a Big Mac man, but yeah, I don't mind the nuggets.
Let's
Oh
go.
shit. Yeah, that's like Super's number one meal. This man's like always sending me
Hey,
pictures of his Big Macs.
hey, don't expose me, all right?
Yo,
He's
he's
got
got.
like a loyalty reward card and everything. It's wild.
Yo, Super's coming back though, dude. He got liquidated, and now look where he's at, dude. He's a king, bro. He's getting those link cubes back.
Fuck yeah, and more.
Let's
Yeah, I
go.
always got to make sure I
What
have
you
the
been up
link
to?
cubes.
Yeah, that's number one priority. Everything I do is for Link. I mean, it may not seem like it, but that's just a for sure bet for me. So I just yeah.
Yeah, I meant it in like a literal sense. I have like ChainLink cube dice, and so I always have that with me when I'm getting a Big Mac. Just feels right.
That's funny. Did you see the Monopoly Man Chainlink? I forgot who made it. I think it was Chainlink Hub, but the little 3D Monopoly Man with a Chainlink cube.
Oh yeah, yeah, I did saw that. That was pretty cool. It's like a 3D printed version of Sergey's the Monopoly Man.
Oh my god, CLG, you got to release like your own merch line or something. I feel like that would pop off.
I feel like effectively everything Chainlink branded is basically CLG merch. Otherwise, it'd just be like that and a frog on it, basically.
Is it just me though? Is like Sergey like well on his way to being kind of like the next like Steve Jobs type? Like well, like like in 10 years from now. Like am I alone in thinking that or is anyone else kind of like on board with that?
Nah, I'm on board with it.
I could see that. Kind of a mysterious leader type visionary.
Yeah.
Every good project or company has that type.
Just comes in and disrupts the game, and like the world was forever changed, you know, since them coming in.
Yeah, sees the world in a different place. That's the good quality of a good leader.
100%. Um, I guess CLG, just for like the YouTubers that we have and maybe people that aren't familiar with you, could you give us like a brief intro to like who you are and like what you do for the Chainlink community? I know most people probably know, but just for the YouTubes.
Yeah, sure. So for those who don't know, I'm ChainLinkGod. I'm that one frog on Twitter who's obsessed with Chainlink. I'm effectively like a Chainlink community ambassador, so I kind of help coordinate the community and kind of help educate people on what Chainlink does, what it does for the blockchain smart contract ecosystem, and kind of help a lot of the time debunk the FUD as it usually pops up from time to time is kind of what I help with, but primarily educating people, mostly on Twitter, but I've also write some content on smart content, Medium publication with Crypto Oracle, and also have a Chainlink God podcast, which should have more on those channels in the future.
Let's go. Where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so that's the best place is definitely Spotify. It's just Chainlink God podcast. I didn't think of a better name than that, but that's you could find a bunch of mostly Chainlink related content, but we've also talked about Bitcoin, Ethereum, MEV, and some other concepts.
All right, so I need to come clean. I was at the gym, I think like 3 weeks ago, listening to CLG break down MEV while I was getting in a workout. And I don't know how I felt after leaving the gym about that. My life has been consumed by Chainlink knowledge. But it was an amazing episode and breakdown of MEV. So if you guys haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know if that's necessarily gym hype listening, but if it works, it works.
That's exactly how I felt. I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about listening to that as I just like pumped out a workout. But hey, they got the job done.
Oh my god, Chase. I could totally see you doing that, bro. Let's go. Um, Yeah, so I know CLG. We wanted to dive into CCIP in layer 2 for this episode. I guess, for the listeners that might not know at like a very high level, like what is CCIP and like how does it work within the Chainlink ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So CCIP is effectively the cross-chain interoperability protocol, which is a cross-chain messaging and cross-chain token bridging solution that's going to be built on Chainlink. So that was something that was announced at SmartCon, and that's like an additional service built on top of the Chainlink network that'll be rolling out sometime in the future. And that's effectively helping create a multi-chain ecosystem. So as we see lots and lots of different blockchains out there, each have their distinct advantages. Some go for higher speed, more decentralization, privacy, different computation models, but they're currently very isolated from one another. So what CCIP is effectively using Chainlink oracles to bridge data from one blockchain into another, and that could be from Ethereum to Polygon to BSC to Solana to Avalanche to wherever you want, kind of creating this universal substrate between all these chains, all secured by Chainlink oracles, basically relaying data across. And there's more specific mechanisms how that's secure that I can dive into if it's relevant at this point. But it's effectively like this universal cross-chain interoperability solution.
Yeah, could you kind of like go like a level deeper for people who may not have like a ton of technical context? Like, what are some like practical examples of this like universal like messaging layer between all these layer 1 blockchains?
Yeah, so the most common we see just in general in the ecosystem is cross-chain token bridges. So if you want to be able to take your Link or stablecoins or ETH or Bitcoin or whatever from like Ethereum and transport it onto Polygon or some other chain you want to use it on, or from a different chain to another chain, you can effectively use CCIP as a secure bridge to do that. And that's kind of like the token bridging aspect, but that's kind of one half of the equation. Where CCIP really shines is generalized data passing. So you can move not only tokens across blockchains, but also generalized messages and more specifically commands, which when combined with moving tokens can have really powerful combinations. So you can send your tokens from one blockchain to another and attach a message to it saying, hey, I want to earn the highest yield across these blockchains, across these protocols. And the bridge can effectively automate those tasks on your behalf and allocate those tokens on your behalf according to whatever commands you gave with those tokens. So you can create cross-chain yield aggregation solutions and even interesting use cases like cross-chain collateralized loans, like being able to have collateral on, say, like Ethereum, and then be able to borrow stable coins on Arbitrum or an Optimism or Starkware or something. And so you're able to leverage the benefits of these different blockchain networks while using a single messaging standard. So regardless of what blockchain you want to move your tokens to, or you want to just uh, interact with other blockchains while staying on your blockchain of choice, you can have CCIP effectively automate all of the interactions with other chains on your behalf while staying within the environment that you choose to stay within. So those are kind of like the more advanced applications of what's more specifically uniquely enabled by CCIP.
And those the automation functions that you had touched on, like that could range across really just any sort of use case. So it'd be like industry agnostic as like smart contracts get more and more adoption. I would assume. Is that is that the keepers that would be performing these on these programmable token bridges ecosystems?
So this would be use case agnostic, but Keepers is a little bit something different. Keepers aren't necessarily cross-chain. They're for automating smart contracts on like a single chain. So if something like BZX needs automated liquidations on Ethereum, then Keepers can monitor contracts on Ethereum and then trigger executions as needed. But you can really think of CCIP in this context as like cross-chain Keepers, where it can monitor contracts across multiple blockchain networks, and if it checks like, oh, okay, you can get better yield on this different protocol and this different blockchain, then it can trigger a transaction to transfer your funds. So it's like a much more advanced, evolved form of a keeper. But really, the keeper aspect of it is like one aspect of CCIP, of that automation, where it's like Keepers isn't necessarily going to be used for cross-chain token bridging, and certainly not cross-chain message passing, but CCIP can take on Keeper type functionalities and qualities to it.
Yeah, and with CCIP, isn't it also like a completely decentralized solution versus some of the competitors which are centralized?
Yeah, so they're like with cross-chain bridges in general, when you boil it down to that part, it's kind of we see like a broad spectrum. If you see something like the Binance chain bridge, then it's just Binance holding custody of your funds and then minting you some wrap tokens. That's 100% centralized. Most cross-chain token bridges are effectively multi-sigs, but a lot of them are very small multi-sig sets, like a 3 or 4 of something. And that's not really that decentralized, and there aren't really any protections there. So CCIP, while it's not launched yet, is designed to be bootstrapped off of the 100 plus Chainlink nodes that are already running in production. So it'll have this decentralized validator set all ready to go that already secures tens of billions of dollars in DeFi, plus it can scale up to secure the tens of billions, hundreds of billions, maybe trillions that's going to be in a multi-chain economy. And there's kind of, in addition to like the decentralization, which is certainly important, there's also other like safety measures on top of that, like transfer limits where only a certain amount of tokens can be transferred across a bridge in a certain time. So if there were any issues, the entire bridge couldn't just be all drained at once. So it's like a transfer limit. And then there's also the anti-fraud network, which is kind of a separate Oracle network in addition to CCIP that's effectively monitoring the CCIP token bridges and the underlying blockchains, and can effectively pause the bridge if there's any malicious activity or if there's any like extended reorg activities on certain chains to kind of protect users. So that can kind of help mitigate those losses as like an emergency circuit breaker.
Hey, CLJ, can you expand a little bit on the anti-fraud network? Like, how does that ecosystem look in terms of the setup? Like, are those going to be committees of nodes that have to have like link collateralized to basically service? What does that look like?
Yeah, so what it looks like from what Sergey talked about and what was in the announcement blog post, there wasn't too much about link collateralization. I think that's like all Chainlink services will play a key role as there's much more value secured, and with super linear staking, that can end up securing a lot of value in that bridge. With the anti-fraud network specifically, that's like an independent set of nodes that are some of the most reliable, some of the most highest earning and the highest opportunity cost of being malicious nodes in the network, separate from the nodes running the CCIP bridge. So it's effectively CCIP is like a collection of different bridges between different chains under like a universal standard. And then there's anti-fraud networks that basically monitor those nodes in the CCIP network, plus the blockchain networks for any kind of irregular activity, and can automatically pause things as needed. So in the future, I would imagine there would be some type of staking requirement, or that I believe in the blog it was mentioned that the users of CCIP can be in the anti-fraud network. So, if you're a DeFi protocol who's securing tens of billions and relies deeply upon CCIP, you probably want to have a say if something goes wrong and have the capability to pause the CCIP bridge that interacts with your contract. Then you could have the capability to join the anti-fraud network. So like the anti-fraud's like a decentralized circuit breaker group, kind of helping protect the different bridges that are being run by CCIP.
Is it kind of like a DAO? Are they voting upon whether or not a shutdown should occur? Or do you have any insight into how that process would work?
Yeah, I think conceptually you can kind of think of it as a DAO, but functionally I would say it's more automated, where what the anti-fraud network does is effectively sending like regular heartbeat messages saying everything's okay. And if it ever stops sending heartbeat messages, meaning it's no longer monitoring if something happened there, or it sends like an alert message, which is like just like Chainlink Keepers and like all the Chainlink services, it's entirely automated. So it wouldn't necessarily be a DAO-driven vote. It could be implemented in that way if users needed it for their implementation, but it would be more of like an automated tracking and monitoring, and it would automatically send like a pause message if something were to go wrong. So it's meant to be a lot more faster acting than like getting like a manual voting from a DAO. But if you wanted to have it implemented in that way, I'm sure there'd be capabilities to do that as well.
Yeah, it seems like couldn't that be taken advantage of? Like if you know the key triggers for the automation, couldn't you try to disrupt the network?
Well, I don't think there'd be like a single entity who would be able to effectively disrupt things because the anti-fraud network itself would be a decentralized network. So, and this decentralized network would be of the users who have financial skin in the game, where if CCIP is shut down and it's acting legitimately, their own protocol would be harmed. So they have no incentive to do that. And it would be the Chainlink nodes who have skin in the game through Link and who have effectively the highest amount of like revenue earning within Chainlink Oracle networks. So they have a strong incentive to keep the Chainlink network running. And if its CCIP is running correctly, there really isn't an incentive for anyone to disrupt things, but there is a large incentive to help prevent any losses if there were to occur, because any extended losses within any Chainlink Oracle service would negatively affect the Link token. And because entities within the anti-fraud network would be financially exposed to Link or through Link services, then they would have a strong incentive to, Jesus, they would have a strong incentive to basically help mitigate and reduce any possible losses.
So switching gears a little bit to talk about like the user side. It's like in the future, or with CCIP, you have this like generalized like cross-chain interoperability for development. Like what will this look like for users? Like will they even be aware of what blockchains they're using when they're interacting with these dApps on the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the cool part with the user aspect because you're able to abstract away other blockchain networks effectively. It would be as if you're only ever staying on one blockchain. So if you prefer the user experience of Ethereum or a specific blockchain network, you can stay on that blockchain network and yet still gain access to the liquidity and the protocols and the benefits of applications on other blockchain networks. So it's like being able to take advantage of a multi-chain ecosystem without having to go through a bunch of, shitty, not very reliable, poor user experience bridges. You could just go through a universal CCIP bridge, have it either send it your commands or use a DApp that basically uses CCIP to automate that process. So effectively the theme is for users, a lot of the friction and a lot of the experience of interacting in a multi-chain ecosystem would be effectively abstracted away. So I think ultimately, like the longer term vision of blockchains in general is that users wouldn't really know what blockchain they're using and they wouldn't really have to know or care what blockchain they're using. They would just reap the benefits of the liquidity of a multi-chain ecosystem, which I think is like that's almost like the ultimate goal of the blockchain ecosystem as a whole is abstract away the complexities and just present the users the benefits.
And so like, as services are brought more and more on chain, what does that look like for like the average person to use these services? Like, are dApps all going to have like little war chests of Link to basically pay for these calls and services that the network is going to be providing? Because I've always like wondered, we bring a lot of dApps on the show that talk about that, but I'm always curious like what that relationship looks like on the back end.
I mean, it would be similar to other Chainlink Oracle services. So if you want to take advantage of any Chainlink Oracle service, whether it's price feeds, BRF, proof reserve, keepers, or CCIP, you would need to incentivize the nodes and pay the nodes with Link tokens. So that can be Link that they acquire, that could be Link that they get through revenue in their DApp, that can be directly from users, but most of the time it's abstracted away. So like purchased from like a DAO treasury or just automatically purchased like as user revenue comes in, you can purchase Link on a DEX and then it can use that Link to then pay for CCIP services. So really it would be abstracted away from the users, but Link is like the incentivization currency of the Chainlink ecosystem, and every node is always paid in link tokens for their services to ensure that they have financial skin in the Chainlink network itself and its proper operation. So there's a lot of ways to abstract it away from the users, but in some regard, there would need to be some way to get a hold of link tokens and then paying for these Oracle services, which CCIP is one of them.
That's damn. Okay, all right. COG just comes in just dropping truth bombs. All right, so we talked a little bit about CCIP, talked a little bit about the anti-fraud network, talked a little bit about the Dons. How does OCR fit into this larger jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah, so for OCR, for those who don't know, OCR is off-chain reporting. So that's the off-chain aggregation of data. So in the context of price feeds, rather than each node individually submitting data points for an Oracle update, so if there's like a network of 31 nodes, 31 transactions, OCR batches those all together into one transaction. And OCR today is primarily designed for the medianization of financial value, aka OCR is just for price feeds today. But what's being effectively developed for CCIP is OCR v2, which is like the generalization of OCR. So the ability to aggregate any type of data off chain, not just market prices by taking a median value. So that's important because CCIP is effectively monitoring blockchains for the initiation of CCIP transactions and then packaging all those observations together and then submitting that to another blockchain network in a single transaction. So CCIP is one of those things that's going to be enabled by a newer version of OCR, but rather than OCR aggregating like the price of Bitcoin, it's aggregating observations of a user request or like a user signature effectively. And all of the signatures signing off on a cross-chain transaction or cross-chain data or token transfer, whatever, is all going to be aggregated into a single transaction the same way Chainlink price feeds work today. So OCR is very important for scalability because eventually there's going to be a lot of cross-chain interactions. And if there's a CCIP network with like 50 Chainlink nodes and every interaction would require 50 transactions from nodes, wouldn't be very scalable or realistic. But if every cross-chain interaction is just one transaction, but that one transaction is observation from dozens of different Chainlink nodes, then that's like orders of magnitude more scalable and realistic. So OCR will play a very, very crucial role in powering CCIP.
Does that also kind of expand the scalability of the layer ones that are integrated with Chainlink as well? Like like you have different blockchains that have different block sizes and times.
It wouldn't necessarily increase the scalability in terms of like the throughput of a DApp like Uniswap or Compound or Aave or something, but it would increase the scalability in terms of like how many cross-chain interactions can you do in a certain time frame, because like you said, like there's a limited amount of block space, and if you were to saturate all that block space with individual transactions, then you can only do so many cross-chain interactions at a time. But by batching it together, you could do more cross-chain interactions at a time. So in a way, it is increasing scalability in the sense of cross-chain interactions can occur more frequently and can occur at a higher throughput. So it's kind of scalability in a certain like limited sense, but it's scalability of a very crucial piece of infrastructure for enabling cross-chain applications.
Gotcha. So is it kind of like fair to say it's scalability in the middleware that supports all the connected layer ones? So ultimately, like you don't need the processing speed on any particular layer one because it's the middleware solution that's scalable.
Yeah, in terms of cross-chain interactions and CCIP, that scalability is really what helps increase that process and allow for much more throughput between different blockchains. So it's like increasing the flow through a pipe between like two different buildings. That's effectively what you're doing, but with CCIP.
So I'm actually curious, like, what are your thoughts? Like, I haven't really seen a lot of discussions around this, but you have the Taproot upgrade coming to Bitcoin, and how I understand it, that is sort of paving the way for smart contracts to come online for Bitcoin. What does it mean for you philosophically once you combine what Chainlink is, having a decentralized Oracle network and a decentralized solution, and you combining that with decentralized money?
Yeah, Taproot, it's not enabling smart contracts in the terms of like generalized programmable EVM compatible smart contracts. It's more of like a privacy type upgrade for more specific DLC type contracts where everything kind of needs to be like pre-written. So it's like a very limited form of smart contracts for some type of financial agreements. But regardless, because Chainlink's blockchain agnostic, then Bitcoin's another environment through which data and tokens can be bridged to and from effectively. And so I think that there's definitely a lot of room for a lot of synergy between Bitcoin and Chainlink in that regard, whether that's bridging Bitcoin across different blockchains using CCIP, or whether that's bringing data and tokens into Bitcoin from other blockchains or from other real world data sources effectively. But I think that Bitcoin gets a lot of its advantages not from any smart contract capability, in which it's, for the time being in its current implementation, is just always going to be inherently limited just due to its design and ossification. But it does have its advantages in maximally censorship resistant money. And once you can bridge that money across different chains and being able to like use it as collateral, or being able to put it on a DEX and earn liquidity providing fees, or collateralize options, or like whatever the hell you want to do. I think that's like where the real value proposition is between something like a middleware like Chainlink and a censorship resistant money like Bitcoin. So a lot of synergies, but I don't necessarily think anything like Taproot is going to make Bitcoin a smart contract chain, really.
Gotcha. I really appreciate you diving into that, because there's been like a thought that like I just don't know enough to break down by myself. So it's awesome to have access to a resource like UCLG to break that down.
Yeah, of course. I'm definitely not a Bitcoin expert, much more Ethereum and smart contract side, but I do respect what Bitcoin's done. They've taken a very distinctly different route than most any other project.
Yeah, I'm curious, CLG, like what are you most excited about with CCIP?
I think the general, like what we're already seeing is that things are shifting more towards like a multi-chain ecosystem. And so I think that what we'll really see is like CCIP is like throwing an accelerant on the fire, basically helping speed up this inevitable future. And I think that what's quite interesting is, whether you like them or not, but I think that central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are going to become more prevalent. And I think that that will have the capability to introduce trillions of dollars into the blockchain ecosystem. And central bank currencies are going to be minted and distributed on their own ad hoc ledger. That's most likely what's going to happen. And you'll need some kind of bridging technology to actually bring that liquidity into other ecosystems like DeFi. We already use a ton of centralized stablecoins within DeFi as debt, as being able to borrow it, or just for trading it against it. I think that CBDCs, as they become more accepted, will take on a large amount of liquidity, and that will be able to be bridged into DeFi through CCIP effectively. So I think that's a significant market opportunity, and especially as financial institutions start transacting and use CBDCs as their medium of exchange, then when they want to start bridging into DeFi, they're going to want to use their same medium of exchange, which means that they're going to have to end up using Chainlink in order to get their tokens over effectively, or that's going to be the most liquid and the most secure bridge in order to do that. So I think in terms of like maximum impact, or the largest event that could happen for the DeFi and smart contract ecosystem, I think that that's where CCIP would have the largest impact. But in general, I think what we'll see is a lot of applications take like a multi-chain approach, where we'll see things like SushiSwap. They'll deploy their same contract on Ethereum, on Polygon, on BSC, on Arbitrum, and Optimism, and they'll deploy it across all these different networks, but it's the same contracts, but they don't interact with each other. They're like isolated deployments. But I think with CCIP, what we'll start seeing is like actually cross-chain applications where users don't go through a bridge, and they don't necessarily have to like again know what blockchain that they're using, but they interact with one application, benefit from the liquidity across all chains, and can even do things like storing your NFTs on Ethereum, where they're the most secure, but then being able to prove you own that NFT and start using it in games on like Polygon, while without having to actually move your NFT anywhere, just proving that you own them through CCIP. It's like a proof reserve type use case of CCIP. So I think there's like an infinite amount of possibilities on what you could create as a developer with CCIP, and I know this analogy is a little overdone, but it's like the internet in the early 90s where, we're building the initial infrastructure, but what's actually going to end up being created out of it and what's going to be the massive use cases in the next decade or two, can really only be told by seeing what happens in the future. So I'm personally very excited.
Yeah, going off that, CLG, like what are some ideas that you've had, or just like whether it's like a whole industry or just like use cases, like what excites you to see like be disrupted in the coming years?
Yeah, I think in general, there's like a lot of maximisms on specific chains, and I think that that's eventually going to just be broken down in general once people kind of just have this seamless access to multiple different chains. I mentioned some previous use cases before, but I think some of the coolest ones are like just cross-chain collateralized loans. So being able to have assets on different blockchains, all as collateral, then borrow tokens on one chain and then bridge those tokens to another chain and then deploy that into an application that allows you to uh, like earn yield across all these different chains. So it's like a web of operations effectively. So I think cross-chain collateralized loans will be extremely powerful because that allows you to use, a lot of lending platforms are like wrap tokens now. But if it's something like wrap Bitcoin, then it's like a centralized custodian. But if you can use native Bitcoin as collateral and it stays on the Bitcoin blockchain, but you can use it as collateral on Ethereum, and then you can go and borrow stablecoins on Arbitrum and then deposit that into a protocol that seeks yield across every single blockchain in existence. I think there's just like infinite steps of composability that's enabled.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I love just how early we are and how we can just like kind of try and predict the future of crypto, but no one really knows where everything is going, and I think the future is just going to be very surprising. In terms of even technology we haven't thought of today, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole the whole wide world of opportunities that we can never possibly imagine today. Just like most people could not imagine, self-paying loans and these different protocols that already exist today and are growing at a, accelerating rate.
Hey, CLG, I was wondering if you could touch on the future demand of the Chainlink token as the services are fully rolled out. So CCIP, sequences, wow, I was butchered that, FSS, VRF, and keepers.
Yeah, so effectively, like as the adoption of the Chainlink network increases, that's a direct connection to the increase of user fees that need to be paid alongside that, because every additional user means new paying users effectively. So the growth of adoption means increase of aggregated fees, and as there's more aggregated fees for a specific service, the subsidies for that service aren't as needed and it can be decreased and can be reallocated for the launching of different services, different Oracle networks, and whatnot. So effectively, there's kind of two aspects. You'll have if adoption grows, which is kind of what things depend on, and we've clearly already seen, is that there's a greater breadth of projects paying in Link for these Oracle services, and then there's a vertical aspect where as each protocol secures more value, they need to pay to get higher levels of security for their services, whether that's keepers with more nodes, or that's price feeds with additional nodes, additional data sources, increased update frequency, or CCIP with more connections to more blockchains. Then those users will have to pay more Link to get access to higher security guarantees for their services. So it's kind of a dual aspect of horizontal, more users, and vertical users need more security guarantees. So it's kind of all dependent upon the adoption of the network. But given that adoption increases, every Chainlink Oracle service requires link. And that is true today, where users using Chainlink Oracle services are paying in link. Now, new Oracle services, when they first launch, are initially subsidized because that's how you bootstrap the supply side of a network, because nobody's going to pay the full costs as the first user. It would just be insanely expensive, but you can subsidize it, get user fees, then more users join. You don't need the subsidies as much, and then that just becomes predominantly and then entirely user fees entirely. And then as that surplus increases, node operators can invest in more secure infrastructure, and eventually in the future, that will incentivize node operators to compete for those fees, aka they need to stake more link in order to stay competitive against other nodes, because you got to realize at a certain point in the future when there's hundreds and thousands of Chainlink nodes, all with 99.999 repeating uptime and accuracy guarantees, and all of these hyper reliable nodes, how are you going to be able to choose which nodes you want for your Oracle services? Ultimately, it'll come down to how much stake guarantee can a Chainlink node give me? And then that'll be the aspect on how Chainlink nodes are competing. So the increase of user fees will inevitably lead to the increase in staking from nodes competing to get those fees. So it's kind of like a dual flywheel effect for the link token effectively. That's kind of a not well understood aspect, but I think that's like an important aspect of how links tokenomics work.
No, definitely.
I love that. I know we're kind of getting away from CCIP, but you talk about all these new use cases that are going to be brought on chain, but with that, there's a need for data. So can you kind of talk about like what that relationship looks like for data providers to actually monetize their data, to actually be kind of like developed within the Chainlink ecosystem?
Yeah, so for data providers, that's less so about CCIP, and that's more so about how they can monetize their APIs across the blockchain ecosystem. So it's kind of similar in a sense where Chainlink nodes are natively blockchain agnostic, meaning that a data provider, when they join the ecosystem, can immediately start selling access to their data across a multitude of different blockchains. And that can be done, in different approaches. There's a backwards compatible approach where data providers can sell access to their data, their APIs, to existing Chainlink nodes like Deutsche Telekom, like Swisscom, and like these other proven Chainlink node operators, who then purchase those APIs and then sell that data to smart contracts across different blockchains and can deliver that data directly to smart contracts on every blockchain. So it doesn't need a relayer type design. It doesn't need a cross-chain type design for that, because Chainlink nodes already directly deliver data to every supported blockchain. And then there's the other aspect that we've seen more and more is data providers launching their own Chainlink node, effectively allowing them to not only directly sell their data to smart contracts, but also the ability to cryptographically sign their data. So users in smart contracts can verify the exact source and can cryptographically verify that it came from a specific source. So Chainlink is very crucial for data providers who want to increase their revenue by selling their data to existing smart contracts. And because the same reason CCIP is able to exist, because Chainlink nodes are already blockchain agnostic, that blockchain agnosticism is the same is one of the reasons data providers gravitate towards Chainlink, is because a Chainlink integration means you can already sell your data across all of the different environments. And because Chainlink has such a massive network effect, that means you have the greatest collection of users to sell your data to in the first place. There's no point to actually integrate an Oracle or deploy an Oracle node if there's no paying users that exist to purchase your data, because nobody trusts the Oracle solution you deployed upon. But clearly Chainlink doesn't have that problem, which is why so many data providers gravitate towards Chainlink and can immediately start selling their data. So data providers is like one of the very crucial aspects. We see, of course, they're important in price feeds. A lot of different providers selling their data to node operators. Some node operator or some data providers like Kaiko running their Chainlink node within price feeds, and then different standalone data provider Chainlink nodes providing like AML KYC data. Some providing weather data like the like AccuWeather and Google Cloud weather data, and these different types of just unique data sets, which is like one of the crucial aspects of Chainlink. And so it's the data providers can't be forgotten. Definitely.
Yeah, actually, like you bring up a really interesting point. I want to expand on that. It's like with data providers, it could be travel data, weather data, commodity data, satellite data, sports data, um, proof of reserves data, any sort of data, right? So, in effect, if you're bringing all that data to like this kind of ecosystem that once you use that data, you can develop services, is it kind of like, you know, the ceiling is sort of like left to our imagination and creativity of generating value utilizing data?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Like once you put a piece of data on chain and you have users paying for that data, then effectively you can create any type of service imaginable for that. And Chainlink is like a mechanism for bringing all the world's data onto blockchain networks in a backwards compatible manner with like very minimal integration effort on the behalf of data providers. So like what you actually do with that data or like what data you compose together, because you don't necessarily have to just use one type of data or one data source, then the sky's the limit. Like there's an infinite amount of possibilities on how you actually want to integrate that data into your protocol. So there's a whole spectrum of possibilities there.
Yeah, it's basically infinite use cases for Chainlink.
Yeah, I'm actually now we're we're really getting away from the topic at hand, but I just want to get your input. But uh, the way I look at the metaverse, I think it's going to be an interoperable um, realm. I'll just say that. Do you kind of view Chainlink as the anchor between this like physical world of value sharing or trust, anchoring kind of this like physical realm with this like metaverse realm as we begin to create and have that interoperability and have smart contracts in this digital dimension?
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. Like Chainlink is effectively, I think Sergey called it like a decentralized truth machine, where you're basically monitoring one version of the world, in this case, the real world, the external physical world. You're generating a consensus of definitive truth on that, on what is user defines what they need, then it's captured from the physical real world, then packaged and then delivered to a digital, uh, you can call it, you can really call it metaverse, DeFi, smart contract ecosystem, and Chainlink is like the middleware transport layer between these environments. But it's not one way, it's two way. So if a digital metaverse wants to be able to interact with the external world and affect real world systems and send outputs, you could also do that as well. So it's like a bidirectional channel between the two. And it's not necessarily just like a data transport layer. It's that's a key part of it, but it's also like an off-chain computation layer where it can extend this on-chain ecosystem world with any type of off-chain computation that can never be done natively on-chain. So it's still within the virtual metaverse realm, but it's within a different environment that happens at a lower cost and higher frequency and with different properties to it, basically extending this on-chain ecosystem. I think in terms of like metaverse, that's going to require a ton of data as well to operate. That's going to require randomness to operate, and that's going to require interoperability between different metaverse environments, which will probably run on different blockchains, particularly as more corporations start stepping into creating their own permissioned metaverse ecosystems, even if they're on a blockchain or they're not on a blockchain. They'll still need interoperability with on-chain systems to basically bridge all the metaverse type implementations together into one interoperable metaverse, which is really what people are looking for when they talk about metaverse.
Yeah, I might just have to like let this marinate for a little bit. I love it. I love it.
Damn, that's crazy. Jeez. I'm curious, like CLG. I can't think getting maybe back to like Chainlink a little bit more. Future focus for like the rest of this year. and into like 2022, like what are like some exciting developments that you think like the general crowd should be like aware of, for the end of this year and into 2022, that we should be paying close attention to, that will have a big impact just on the network as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about CCIP. I think that we're going to be seeing things like a new version of VRF as well that allow for like subscriptions and more efficient payments in that regard. I think in general, we're going to see a lot more blockchain integrations, particularly on a lot of different environments. I think in terms of like the ecosystem as a whole, we're going to see a lot more adoption of layer two networks, and whether that be Arbitrum, Optimism, in terms of optimistic rollups, or ZK rollups, Starkware, ZK Sync, and the like there. So I think what's likely to happen is that we'll see a lot more Chainlink services launching on layer two networks. And once they launch on layer two networks, we're going to see um, more price feeds in different services operating at a higher frequency. And so one of the things that I know is launching that was in the Solana announcement is that Chainlink oracles are going to be launching on the Solana mainnet at some point later this year. And so the interesting one with that's not a layer two network, but Solana is a uniquely high throughput blockchain. So we'll see price feeds operating on the Solana mainnet running at sub-second uh, price feed update frequencies. So that's some of the fastest speeds that we ever seen for price feeds. And these aren't Pith network price feeds that deliver you an order of magnitude deviation in accuracy for the most basic of price feeds. Like these are going to be Chainlink price feeds. Like they're going to deliver you the accurate price, the same reliability and the same level of accuracy as those we see on Ethereum, but at the speeds and frequencies that we see on Solana, that's enabled by Solana effectively. So I think I haven't really used the Solana ecosystem that much, but we are seeing a type of ecosystem developing on there. And once we see Chainlink oracles deploy on there, Solana developers will actually have access to reliable price feeds that don't have major deviations in them. And at that point, we're going to see a lot of more DeFi protocols deploying and integrating Chainlink price feeds on Solana. And we'll see a lot more unique use cases, things with higher leverage, more accurate, kind of high frequency trading type of activity happening within a DeFi ecosystem because Solana is able to support that speed, and because Chainlink is also able to support that feed, because Chainlink is able to operate the native speed of any blockchain network. That's the bottleneck. It's not Chainlink, it's the blockchain data is being delivered to. And when that blockchain doesn't have that bottleneck, they have a different trade-off, but they have a high frequency and a high speed, then you can have these price feeds and these other Oracle services operating at a very low cost and at a very high frequency. So those are one of the main things that I would be on the lookout in the community when that drops, and seeing what projects launch using those price feeds.
Yeah, it's honestly incredible just how important Chainlink is, the overall DeFi ecosystem and the growth of this industry. Like when you really boil it down.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it could be very underappreciated at times because Chainlink is it's like background infrastructure. You're not interacting with Chainlink directly. You're interacting with protocols that use Chainlink. The same way people don't say they're going to go home and use AWS, they're going to go home and they're going to use Netflix. But Netflix is built upon AWS. In the same regard, when you're using DeFi protocols, those DeFi protocols are using Chainlink and they're paying for Chainlink, or they're paying for Chainlink services to Chainlink node operators. So I think, what we've already seen today is things like price feeds, which sound very elementary, but clearly are not that easy to operate in a very reliable way. That takes a lot of expertise and a lot of time and testing to get that working correctly. And we've seen Chainlink be able to basically perfect that over the past couple of years after innovating that aspect of oracles. And now we see Chainlink securing, over $50 billion in DeFi alone, plus probably another 50 billion in CeFi at this point. Chainlink is clearly already the dominant standard, and the vast majority of DeFi fundamentally wouldn't exist if it weren't for Chainlink. And now we're seeing things like VRF taking off in the NFT ecosystem, and we're seeing more centralized stablecoins and different wrap tokens increasing transparency through proof reserve, and we're seeing a whole whole spectrum of applications now automating their application using Chainlink keepers. And what we're seeing more and more is that applications can use multiple Chainlink Oracle services at the same time. A money market can use Chainlink price feeds to determine when liquidation should happen, then use keepers to automatically execute those liquidations. And you can have, CCIP to be able to have collateral and debt on different chains. And you can use VRF to distribute randomized rewards to people. And there's different ways you can compose Chainlink Oracle services to create more advanced applications. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have Chainlink Oracle services, you don't have off-chain services, all you have is tokens and DAO voting. And those are useful, but those are like 2 building blocks. And you can't do very much when you have 2 building blocks. Like, you need more building blocks to actually create a structure that people care about. And that's kind of like Chainlink. That's where Chainlink comes in. It provides the glue and these different building blocks to actually create more useful applications, where you look at some of the highest TVL applications, Aave, compound synthetics, they're possible because they are powered by Chainlink and they're secured by Chainlink. So I think Chainlink's significantly underappreciated in that regard, but I think its recognition will become more clear over time, and particularly as adoption increases over time and user fee aggregation increases as well, will become effectively self-evident for everybody.
Yeah, one thing, besides the great technology that Chainlink provides, is one thing I noticed is just through interacting with Chainlink employees and from hearing stories from other protocols we've brought on the space, is the amazing team, and how they are actually building a community and ecosystem outside of the technology. Like, if one of their partners needs help or is in trouble, I've heard multiple stories about Chainlink coming to the rescue and supporting those partners. And I think that that's also very undervalued. Like, we all realize that community is huge within the crypto space, but we don't focus on what Chainlink has built their own community around developers, the data providers, the node operators, and what they're actually doing to build out these relationships. And I really, really just appreciate everything that Chainlink does. On like a social and personal level, even with the great technology that they have.
Yeah, I would entirely agree. I think the work that Chainlink Labs team has done is absolutely critical. They've built up a world-class team of a whole spectrum of different people, different developers, different support members, sales, integration experts and whatnot. So anytime a protocol needs help on some integration, or they need, some way of understanding how to integrate Chainlink services or some kind of use case, the Chainlink team is always going to be there to help protocols, because they want to grow the ecosystem effectively. And I think that's, the Chainlink Labs team, even more so than Chainlink, kind of works in the background, but like, they work their magic and they make the ecosystem possible, and they help everybody wherever they can. So they're truly a world-class team, I would say.
Incredible, man. Extremely based.
Very much.
Chase, and do you have any other questions on like the CCIP? He kind of answered a lot of mine.
Yeah, no. Yeah, a lot of my questions were answered. It's, I feel like I'm someone who has at times like an okay grasp at Chainlink. I think there's always a layer deeper to go when it comes to Chainlink. But it's funny whenever CLG comes on. It's just it's hard to keep up. So no, it's always like a pleasure having a conversation with you, man, and breaking this stuff down. Super. I don't know if you had anything else, but if not, I mean, were we going to do like some community questions? Do we have time for that, or?
Yeah, I know we have a special guest from Chainlink coming on in like 7 minutes or so. So we could start community questions, and then if he gets here, we could just transition to that.
Yeah, I think that works.
Bet. Let's do that. If you guys have questions for ChainLinkGod, just request now, and I'll let you guys on one at a time.
I actually have one from the audience. Hashcop asked, when does CCIP go live?
I don't think they've given a timeline yet. It's one of those things that's going to have to be thoroughly tested. The new service, this will take a few months. That'll take quite a while, and then it'll roll out it'll definitely roll out on testnet first, and then deploy on a few chains, and then probably grow to more chains. But I don't think they've given a specific timeline yet.
Sweet, thank you.
Of course.
What's going on, Chainlink Retriever? Oh, he dropped.
Oh.
Right away.
Never mind, you turned.
I see you, brother. What up, little Link?
What's going on, guys? Chainlink, got a question for you. So, as far as I've been following Chainlink for the past few years, like they don't flinch. There never seems to be many issues or anything. Everything seems pretty flawless. With all like CCIP and all these different avenues, let's say over the next few years, what do you think the biggest issues or difficulties will be with Chainlink expanding to like all these different things? Are there any big hurdles that you think need to be mounted?
I think that it'll be crucial to maintain like the same level of security and reliability across all these environments. So like what makes CCIP work is that there's plenty of blockchains to connect to, meaning there needs to be a Chainlink integration on each blockchain. But I think what's crucial and what will probably will take time is like ensuring that each integration, each chain is of the highest reliability and of the highest tamper resistance. Like we've seen a lot of different bridges get exploited in the past. We saw Poly Network exploited for $600 million due to some issues. So to like avoid those types of things, they're gonna have to take time to like deeply test and integrate, and that means that they may not necessarily be as fast to integrate every chain, but it's going to be more secure. So effectively scaling up the ability to support more chains and more services without compromising on security is definitely not an easy task. But I think it's something that like as the Chainlink team scales, which is, I mean, it's already like I think it's like a few hundred people at this point, but as that scales, I think that'll become a little easier. But I think that'll be one difficulty is scaling out to more blockchain networks at a sufficient speed, and then not decreasing reliability, which they would never do. But it's like striking that right balance effectively.
Yeah, that's awesome. Quality is always hard to scale. And I don't want to be a hog, but I have one more question. And by no means shitting on any competitors, because I respect anyone in the space, because I think everyone's moving towards the same goal. But is there anyone, so let's say Band, API 3, is anyone else like blockchain agnostic and going cross-chain? Because we've seen like Pyth or Pith, however you say it, and then Wolfram, like Chainlink's obviously gone to Cardano, and Solana is going to Solana and will be like that Oracle service. Is anyone else, other competitors, going to other chains?
I think there's two aspects. There's one of being blockchain agnostic, and then there's one of being a cross-chain solution. So in terms of being blockchain agnostic, we see some implementations of oracles being blockchain agnostic, but most of the time they use like a relayer design, meaning their oracle only delivers data to a single blockchain, and then they have to use relayers to then move that data to another blockchain, which basically creates a point of failure in that first blockchain, which is effectively what we saw with Pyth when Solana shut down for a day. They weren't able to deliver data to any other blockchain effectively because Solana was down. And that's like one of the downsides of that type of approach compared to Chainlink, which is natively blockchain agnostic. So there's some oracles that take that approach of being blockchain agnostic, but they don't take necessarily the optimal route. They take a more easier to integrate because they just outsource their chain integration to another protocol, but that creates dependencies that often break or it can break. In terms of like cross-chain interoperability, I don't think we've really seen any oracles stepping into that regard. Usually cross-chain protocols are just cross-chain bridges, and they don't really step into the oracle game because Chainlink's already pretty much conquered that game. And most oracles who are focused on oracles are, well, focused on oracles. They don't have much bandwidth to do cross-chain development. So that's not really something we've seen yet. But as Chainlink launches CCIP, what usually happens when Chainlink launches a successful service, there comes copycats after that. So we'll probably see that. But just like what happened before, Chainlink remains to be the industry standard because it has the network effects and it has that security and reliability. So that's effectively my view on that kind of ecosystem.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate everything you do for the community.
Of course, happy to help.
Thanks for coming on, Little Link. Appreciate you, brother. What's going on, Colin?
Hey, I just tuned in here. I was at a meetup right now, so I haven't been able to listen in much, but yeah, I guess I got invited to tell you guys that, Chainlink's doing a lot of events in cities in person around you. I hosted a cafe meetup today, met some cool guys. We were talking about how, like, the businesses we support, we want to vote more with our dollars, and it would be cool if some local businesses, they had a pool of their money, and you could see where they spent, their donations. But I don't know, just some interesting conversations at these blockchain meetups. And the other thing is the hackathon is coming up. Not sure if you guys touched on that yet, but October 22nd, and there's going to be a lot of launch parties happening. Like, I'm doing one in Berkeley, and I think there's one in Singapore, and I want to say Philadelphia, Mexico City. If you go to chainlink.com and events, that's where they're starting to list them all. I'm doing these weekly cafe meetups, and yeah, we're trying to do more in-person stuff. So if you guys think that's cool, and yeah, just maybe we could have a little conversation about it.
That sounds really awesome, Colin. On social, does the hackathon have a unique social handle that people should follow?
No, not really. I don't think so. Just everybody from Chainlink's tweeting about it, kind of, and Patrick's running that great course on Free Code Camp, so that's a good way to learn. But yeah, my Twitter, I'm posting the launch party there. We got meetup pages for all these events, and
Hey, Colin, do you do you need to have like developer experience to kind of contribute to these hackathons? Like, what does that kind of look like?
no, so yeah, I know at the last hackathon, the winning teams, they were made up of a couple developers and some people who had some business knowledge. Whatever you bring to the table, people want to hear it. So the event I'm at right now, it's like a networking event for climate and sustainability, but people here want to be integrated with blockchain and find ways to track emissions and carbon emissions. So yeah, whatever your niche is, if you have some type of good knowledge on it and you could contribute, then yeah, there's some great projects that could come out of that.
That's awesome. Very, very based. Thank you so much, Colin. We appreciate the shout out. Everyone, check out Colin's page. I know he's always posting info on the hackathon. It's a really big event for the entire community. And like Colin's saying, even if you have minor experience or no experience but you're just passionate about Chainlink, there's probably a place for you guys to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is, if you have interest in the industry and just like want to collaborate and kind of get involved, I feel like this is like amazing first step to kind of like do it in a very non-pressured way. So definitely check it out, guys, if you're tuning in.
Appreciate you, Colin. Thanks for coming on.
I actually had a question, CLG. We were talking about before you had hopped on. I don't know if you had a chance yet to kind of like read through it and look at the news with Visa today. But I just wonder if you had any sort of like thoughts around that news.
Yeah, so just before that, I shared at the top. I think it should be working. So I shared a link to the Chainlink Hackathon. That's if you want to learn more about that, then definitely check out that link. It's the 2021 fall Chainlink Hackathon. There's $350,000 in prizes, and there's a bunch of different workshops, speaking events, and a bunch of different sponsors, including Google Cloud, which is one of the recent ones. And definitely, if you're a doesn't matter if you're an experienced developer or you are a new developer or don't know anything about coding, then this event is for you to learn, Chainlink Oracle services, developing smart contracts, and then if you're a developer, you can even end up pitching your projects to VCs. So definitely an event to check out if you are building anything or want to build anything in the smart contract ecosystem. I would definitely check out that link. And back to your question, I did look at it a little bit. I think I think the greater theme of Visa just getting more connected to the Ethereum ecosystem is pretty significant. I mean, we already saw them buy a CryptoPunk, and now they're developing cross-chain solutions for CBDCs. And we see a lot of different cross-chain solutions out there, and it's kind of there's a lot of different implementations. This one's more of a state channel, so pre-funding liquidity payment channels is has its own advantages and disadvantages. But I think in general, having traditional entities building Ethereum smart contracts and building infrastructure for Ethereum is going to be, it's entirely bullish. I think that they're taking Ethereum very seriously in terms of like one of the largest payment providers in the world, developing this type of solution. So I think it's something that was fairly cool to see.
What's going on, Requiem?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Crystal clear.
Loud and clear.
All right. Well, how's your cat, CLG?
He's doing pretty well. I had to. He kept jumping on the blind, so I had to put him outside my room, unfortunately. But he's doing well.
That's good to hear. Just to switch, there was a false liquid. Have you heard of the Frax USD Chainlink price feed news a few days ago?
I did not.
It was talking about like an unexpected liquidity migration caused false liquidation event. If I can just send the link to Crypto Mewtwo if you guys wanted to hear more about that. But essentially, something I think there was like one old Link Marine who was a bit concerned how the Chainlink Oracle services reported a false false price feed due to some unexpected liquidity issues within Riot Capital. Has anyone heard of that one before or no?
You send that information, I can look over it a little bit later. But that's not something I heard of.
Okay, all good. Well, thanks. I'm glad to hear Linky's good.
Yeah, thanks as always.
Thanks for coming on, brother. I think we got one more in the queue here. What's going on, Juice?
Guys, what's happening?
Hey, you made it up here, brother. What's going on?
Yeah, so I got like 3 questions. Honored to be talking to you guys. No, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Quant and how it compares to CCIP, because they're it seems like they are maybe a little bit ahead, but also a little bit different. Number 2 is this new crypto called Wormhole. Lets you transfer NFTs from Ethereum to Solana. I was curious what your thoughts on that were. And then the last thing was Visa's. So like when Visa came out with the cross-chain CCP news, there was like a bunch of what looked like Chainlink cubes like in the pictures, but it wasn't mentioned, obviously. Is Chainlink involved with any of that?
Okay.
Quant, Wormhole, and Visa.
Gotcha. In terms of Quant's quite a bit different. They're like permissioned off-chain business-to-business agreement based on closed source infrastructure. So it's like very much more of an enterprise type off-chain agreement between two different counterparties where it's kind of the data's hashed on a chain. And that's kind of their use case of it's really more of like a multi-chain Infura. And then you can also have these off-chain agreements that are loosely connected to a blockchain. While what CCIP is effectively doing is it's like a decentralized network for permissionless cross-chain applications running on open source infrastructure. So it's like something that's geared more specifically towards like the DeFi ecosystem and for the smart contract ecosystem, and not so much for off-chain B2B agreements per se. So that's like a core differentiator. It's like almost an entirely different field, really. In terms of wormhole, I think bridging NFTs is kind of an interesting concept, but I think one question is how likely people are really going to want to do that. I mean, it's one thing for like gaming applications. I could see use cases for it there, but in terms of like JPEGs, I don't know if that's necessarily like, I'm just like thinking for me personally, I don't see why I would want to really bridge NFTs anywhere. Once I have an NFT, I can prove I own it and I can, spread clout about it, which is like one aspect of NFTs. But I think it's fairly interesting. Just kind of wondering about usability there. And in terms of Visa, I mean, there's always references to hexagons and cubes if you look deep enough into anything. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they were doing some kind of work with Chainlink. From reading what they had for that Visa white paper that they posted, it seemed like a payment channel, so it doesn't really seem like anything Chainlink would be directly related to, but ultimately it wouldn't really surprise me if they were in some aspect.
Maybe it's room for another tool for Chainlink, another service.
Very potential. I mean, there is opportunities that sound like swapping between different coins and different chains, and if that's the case, then it would be very useful to have a price feed to ensure that those exchanges actually happen at a proper exchange rate. Um, that would be a pretty crucial integration there. But yeah, there's a world of opportunities there.
Yeah. Well, call up Sergey and tell him Juice had this idea. Thank you guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for coming up, Juice.
Thanks, Juice. Appreciate you, brother. I think that is the cue, guys. If give it another second or two, and then we'll call it there.
It was a lot of good questions. CCIP is the whole world of opportunities there.
CLG, I'm curious. Have you kind of dove into green finance and just kind of ESGs and stuff like that, the SDGs world of how Chainlink could be a solution in that industry?
Yeah, there's been some interesting community grants in that regard of funding like a CO2 oracle for accurately monitoring how much CO2 is being put into the atmosphere, and different climate sustainability grants, and just for monitoring the environment, and then monitoring the impact of things like regenerative agriculture. So like monitoring how many trees somebody plants and then incentivizing them through like rebates based on how much they plant. So like you take data from like a satellite, you track a certain portion of land, you see how much more trees have been grown, then you pay the entity who helps like reforest that land. So that's one of the things that IC3 is actually working on. I don't remember the name, but I think there was a grant on that, and that was a pretty interesting ESG sustainability type initiative.
That's awesome. I love that. What's up, 18?
Going on 18? Maybe he's still connecting.
Yeah, maybe bring up the other person that's queued up, and we'll see.
Yo, what up, guys?
Yo,
what's up, 18?
Great base space so far.
Thanks, brother. Do you have a question for CLG?
No, not off the top of my head, been very informative. Lots of exciting stuff going on. With CCIP, OCR, everything that's going on just reinforces just how critical Chainlink is to the blockchain space, at the forefront of all these innovations, constantly blazing the path. And just, gets me pumped up, man, keeping my head in the game and looking forward to the future.
Absolutely, 100% agreed.
Very base, man. Appreciate you sharing the love. We're all pumped about Chainlink here, that's for sure.
Thank you.
What's going on, Socknug?
Hello. Yeah, I'm a Ditto 18. Amazing space. Appreciate all you guys putting this together. I kind of got two short and easy ones. When do you see timeline-wise Deco taking effect at scale?
It's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think that it'll have a large impact once more institutions start stepping into blockchain ecosystems, or that once they start stepping into smart contracts, because once they do, they're going to need to keep privacy of their internal data while still being able to use it within smart contract applications. In terms of development, I'm not entirely sure. There hasn't been too much of like a timeline given there, but when enterprises start stepping into the space and as things like under collateralized lending and as identity protocols start rolling out, Deco will definitely become a greater importance to exist to enable those applications. So I would say ideally sooner than later, which not a great response, but that's what I'm hoping for.
So in lieu of Deco, and for the meantime, who would you say it provides the best zero knowledge proof technology?
I mean, when you look at zero knowledge proofs, there's two things you can really use it for. You can use it for privacy and you can use it for scalability. And what we've really been seeing it used for is for scalability, where you're able to compress a lot of data into a small proof. So we've seen things like ZK rollups and Validiums, things like Starkware, ZK Sync, and even things like DYDX is running on Starkware, and they're using Chainlink on that. So it's that's complementary in a lot of regards. In terms of like privacy and a little bit of scalability, kind of is like what EY's been doing, and I'm pretty sure Polygon just acquired it in terms of like having a more privacy preserving optimistic rollup, which is like a ZK optimistic rollup, which is fairly interesting. So there's
You said they were called EY?
Yeah, Ernst & Young, like the top 4 auditing firm. They've been working with Polygon. That's a little bit more privacy preserving, but Deco is more unique in the sense that it's not just a regular zero knowledge proof, but that it's zero knowledge proof of data from an existing web server, which is like really the unique aspect of Deco and how it's really useful for like credit scores, for any kind of personal identifiable information that you want to use, but you don't want to actually reveal. So that's like where the key use case of Deco is, which we'll eventually see. And there really doesn't exist a competitor in that regard.
So that's kind of just speaking on what Sergey always goes on about. Why would we change the existing infrastructure when we could just add a layer to make it better? So that makes a lot of sense when you explain like that. As always, appreciate it.
Of course, happy to educate.
Thanks, Socknug.
I think I could probably take a couple more questions and then I gotta hop.
We'll give another second or two, guys. If you want to speak to CLG, ask him a question, just request. Another second or two.
Before anyone else comes on, CLG, obviously I just want to take the time and thank you because I can't imagine how much time of your own that you spend just learning and working with Chainlink. And I also want to thank everybody listening for supporting us from day one or just anywhere along the way. None of this would be possible without y'all as a community. So I definitely just want to just put that out there. So thank you to both you, CLG, and the community for listening.
I appreciate that. I'm always happy to educate and want to kind of echo that as well, as I appreciate everybody listening in as well. I've accumulated some knowledge, but I need people to share it with, and I'm more grateful than ever that people want to listen in and learn for themselves, the the great impact of Chainlink. And there's always more to learn about Chainlink, and I'm always learning more about Chainlink, and I'm happy to spread that information. And I'm super grateful for the support the community gives on all the education stuff that I give in various different formats, including Twitter Space calls like this.
Let's go. These are always a ton of fun. What's up, fam? Soldier?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Doing well.
All right, awesome. It's great to be on, and just wanted to ask if you play any NFT games or if you've heard of the Chainlink War EV for War Riders. I know they use Chainlink so you can send their native token benzene to a person through their nickname on their website, and I was just wondering if you had any experience with War Riders or anything like any NFT game.
Yeah, honestly, not that much, really. I've spent like a large amount of my focus on DeFi. That's where I've really been focused. I've dabbled in some NFTs here and there, and I have some collected, and some people send me some interesting ones, to say the least. But yeah, I don't dabble with NFTs that often. It was one of those things that I kind of missed, and I guess continue to miss. But I'm more than happy to be in the DeFi space. That's where I put like a lot of my focus and effort.
Heck yeah, I feel you. That's where the most growth is right now. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, fam. Soldier. What up, DeFi God?
Hi, thanks for having me on. I just have one question to ChainLinkGod. What is your end game?
So that we can all make it, of course. In reality, it's to like educate the entire ecosystem on the actual factual implications of hybrid smart contracts on not just the isolated DeFi ecosystem, but on the global economy as a whole. Because there can be amazing technology that exists, but if nobody knows about it and nobody uses it, then it's as if it never existed at all. So I think that kind of breaking down the information asymmetry is kind of where I'm really trying to focus and hone in on them. And the ultimate goal is to establish Chainlink as a definitive truth machine and establish hybrid smart contracts as the dominant final form of contractual agreements that eliminates counterparty risk, increases transparency, and creates a more fair world for the entire global economy and everybody within it. So it's kind of big picture view type thing, but that's kind of where I'm really trying to strive and push people to start seeing necessarily. That's kind of where I'm really, really focused on.
It's a very noble cause.
Yeah, it takes a lot of education to try and to convince everybody, especially if they have very little knowledge of blockchains or smart contracts, but it's worth every second.
Absolutely. Appreciate the question, DeFi God. Very based. Thanks for coming up.
Thanks as always, DeFi God.
What's going on, Thomas?
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this space. So I'm a Link Marine, but I'll be honest, I'm definitely not the most active. I'm involved in a lot of projects and I work at the Chamber of Digital Commerce, but I'm definitely a Link supporter. My question is going to be a little bit different, and I'm not trying to like throw shade at any person, but I have seen sort of like I'd say like a struggle between like the Link community and Chris Berniski from Placeholder. I respect Chris. I think he's like a really smart guy. I'm just curious, again, not trying to bash, but why do you think Chris doesn't sort of see value in Link?
Well, you could say the obvious answer is that he's an investor in API 3, which is a Chainlink competitor, and you could leave it at that. But I think that it is a little confusing considering he came up with like the middleware thesis, and he does have a lot of good writings, and I respect his work on that regard. But I don't know if he necessarily grasps the full scope of what Chainlink is necessarily building, that it's not just price feeds, but it's a whole host of off-chain services to expand smart contract applications. I think a lot of the conflict from like the community side was like the piece that Coinbase or CoinDesk had about API 3 being the Chainlink killer, and the quotes from the team of basically kind of hitting on Chainlink a bit. But I think in his regard, I think it's kind of like a self-enforcing loop where he'll have a negative Chainlink take, the Chainlink community will disagree, and then that's just going to inevitably keep causing friction in that regard. So I think realistically, he missed out on Chainlink. Then he invested in a competitor, and then he pushed the competitor, and then now he's seeing pushback from the Chainlink community. So I think that's like the most likely path of what happened. But without being Chris Bernsky, then I can't definitively say, just kind of giving my speculative opinion.
Got it. Thanks so much. Yeah, I always found that really confusing because he's a really smart guy and he seems to, be very balanced in his viewpoints. But yeah, just again, thank you so much, and especially you, Chainlink God. Most of my updates about Chainlink come from you, so can't thank you enough. And thank you so much for allowing me to ask that question.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, guys. I know Chainlink God, we bombarded you with a ton of questions. Just to really, really appreciate you coming on the base space again. I think from all of us, Chase, Super, we really just appreciate you. I think you're really the first one to come on the space and support the base space. I think you were like our first main guest. So just appreciate all the love and support you've shown us and watched us grow, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah, of course. I'm grateful for you having me on. I'm always happy to have some platform to educate the community on Chainlink and then answer some interesting questions here and there. But always happy to expand, help share the knowledge that I've accrued over time, and then hopefully everybody here who listens to the information I hear can then go, tell other people about Chainlink and help give great explanations to other people. So I appreciate you guys for throwing this spaces call together, and I appreciate everybody tuning in and taking a listen and hearing what I got to say about Chainlink. I'm truly grateful.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, I just want to say thanks personally, CLG. I know I already said it earlier, but it really is a joy to just share the stage with you and to kind of pick your brain on these like cutting edge, like tip of the spear type solutions. And if you're listening in, whether it's on YouTube or whether you're in the audience, I do want to give a shout out. Mewtwo recently just rebranded our page. If you want to check that out, it's basedspace.io. And if you enjoyed this type of conversation, we do have a list of guest speakers and some of the links to the videos. So if you like this type of content, just kind of peek the website, peek the YouTube channel. And we'll for sure be uploading this one, assuming CLG, you're okay if we do upload this.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Awesome. Super.
Let's
Did
go.
you have anything you want to add?
No, I basically added it earlier. So just to echo it again, thank you. I honestly can't describe it enough. You and Modern, and I feel like one other person really pushed me to learn about Chainlink and just go down the rabbit hole. And it's completely changed my life in ways that I can't explain. So I really do appreciate everything you do and everybody that listens, because base space and crypto has just it's changed my life. So thank you.
Glad to hear. Had an impact. I'm always happy to educate wherever I can.
Let's go. And special shout out to all the listeners. I mean, we have several hundred listeners tuning in, the Link Marines, everyone. I mean, this whole community is so powerful and empowering. And I think this is a really unique space and a really unique time just in history. So we should just cherish this moment and live it as much as we can.
We're early.
All right, guys. Stay based.
See ya.
Peace
Have
out,
a good one,
everybody.
everyone.